Hello, good morning, and today I'm here with Katharine Matthews. As you can see from the screen, Katharine Matthews, Copywriter English Tutor. So, good morning, Katharine. Well, actually, it's just afternoon, isn't it? Good afternoon, Katharine.
Yes. Yeah, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm perfectly well, thank you. I hope you are too. And thank you for giving me your time to talk to everybody on our channel today. So, without further ado, tell us rewind. How did you get to being Katharine Matthews, Copywriter English Tutor? So, yeah, take us back to the start of your teaching career. Why?
Started teaching in 2007 and was fresh out of PGCE. Had done an undergrad in English studies and had originally wanted to do acting, but was told by a careers advisor at GCSE that wasn't a real job and I needed to do English or something to fall back on, and ended up doing English studies. Liked it, decided to go into teaching, but hadn't ever heard the word copywriter, never been told it. I'd been told that you could go into publishing, had been told that you could go into journalism or creative writing, but otherwise with an English degree, it would be teaching. And that would be pretty much all you could do. Yeah. So did teaching for about 10 years, got to a bit of a crossroads stress-wise, external life stuff, and left for a couple of years to do a sabbatical, do a master's. And during that time, I had no savings, had no knowledge of what I would do to support myself. So I just took a pub job and was working at the top of the Royal Mile in Edinburgh in this gorgeous little whiskey pub, really, really old pub. And I must have tagged in one day and got a message on Facebook from this lad that I'd known a few years before saying, "Oh, I see you're working at this pub. What's the till system like?" Very random question. Said, "It's brilliant. It's an iPad. It's fantastic." Said, "Yeah, I made that. I made that software. I made that app." And he said, "I've just started it up, just started this. And you were just creating." And I said, "Well, if you ever want a hand looking at your website, I can proofread stuff for you and I can do that for you." And he said, "Oh yeah, that'd be great. Can you come in and meet the marketing team?" So I came in and they said, "This is Katharine. She's the copywriter. She'll do it." I was like, never heard the word copywriter, didn't know that word. And I was like, okay. And they said, "Can you write this copy for, I think it was for the App Store.
Oh,
And can you write this blog post?" Okay. "Can you write this?" Okay. And so it was very much a sort of organic self-taught thing. And so I went into copywriting for a couple of years, put myself through the masters, went back to teaching for a little while to get a mortgage, get maternity leave, and was on maternity leave pandemic, and it really gave me to evaluate everything. And here I am now, freelance, pandemic. And I did love teaching, but I think now this is a thing for me.
if that opportunity hadn't presented itself like that, do you think that you would have got out at the time that you did? Would you have started actively looking for something if that hadn't appeared
I
like
think I probably would have. I would have gone back to teaching probably because it's what I was doing. And I knew that we were relocating. So I'd already left this school that I'd essentially grown up in my teaching career in. I mean, I'd been there 10 years from start of my teaching career all the way through. And I'd already left it. So had that emotional detachment and that almost breakup, almost
Yeah.
that bereavement of that very important school. And then when I went into the following schools, when we relocated down south, it was not with the same emotional investment, I guess more sort of sage understanding of the system, maybe more cynicism, definitely, more jaded kind of awareness of the powers that be and the bureaucracy and the red tape and all of the workload side of things. So I definitely would have been looking for an exit route, but I wouldn't have known that this was probably would have been tutoring, or I mean, I do still do a little bit of tutoring, but predominantly it's writing that I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the pandemic, for all of its tragedies, was the grace period that gave me that attachment to really see what my priorities were, and because I'd had the baby during that time, so I very keenly felt that my priorities need to change. Especially because we were in a period of time where protecting the baby was the biggest thing. So going back to a job where there was so much stress, so much done outside of working hours, never not working hours really, are you? So for me, that I just really couldn't let that permeate the time with the baby. Really didn't want it to intrude on that, and I knew that there had to be something that went. It had to be the job. So yeah, I would have got out, but I don't know that I would have been where I am now, and have got so quickly into something that was sustainable and at the same sort of salary, I guess, more or less, depending.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about that development of your copywriting business then, because I know something that worries people isn't just the what can I do, not like I've got loads of transferable skills, but also that fear of how long will it be before I mean, a recurrent theme that I've come across and I feel myself is that I don't earn as much as I did teaching, and I'm working more days, but I don't care because my quality of life is so much better. So so a lot of people in teaching think they need to match their teaching salary. And yet everybody I've talked to has said they aren't doing and they don't care. Or maybe they are doing, but that's not the primary motivating force. So how long do you think it was from when you hands in your notice, you sat down at your desk, day one, teaching salary is gone? How long did it take from that point, do you think, until you got to the point where you could say legitimately, yes, I am making a living at this?
It's a bit of a tricky one because my situation was so different, because I'd had the maternity leave and I knew I wasn't getting paid for the last 3 months if I'd taken the full year. And because of COVID, I absolutely had to take the full year. I was not going back earlier. The idea of being back terrified me, absolutely terrified me. So I had started freelancing around the baby. Baby was born in the August. I'd started maybe January, February, sort of putting tentacles out, tentacles, feelers out. Putting feelers out. I'd already got that. I'd already got my social media channels and my website. It wasn't brilliant, but I had a website and I had a network, as it had been a very dormant network on LinkedIn for 5 years, I suppose, from when I'd done it. 2015, I guess, that period. So it was a case of, I suppose, reawakening that. But to be fair, it was still starting from scratch in a sense. I was freelancing around the baby, a few days a week here and there, maybe 6 months. But because I knew thought I was going back to teaching, I had got full-time childcare arranged from September. And I figured in the last few months, I was making about £1,000 a month, and that was about the same as maternity pay. And I figured, well, if that's what I'm making around the baby, and that's the same as maternity pay, and I can just about survive on that, full-time childcare, then I should hopefully be able to make more than that, because I'll be able to do more lead generation, more networking, that's the thing, more time to actually write. So I guess from around the November, December, I was earning about the same as teaching. And that had been after 15 years of teaching, and I was on UPS 3. Yeah. So with before tax, I was earning the same as I was bringing back after tax. So yeah, There have been some months where I've earned a couple of grand, and that covers my overheads, and pretty much that's it. And then there have been some months where I've really, really, really hustled, or I've had some great projects come in, and they have been maybe 3 or 4 times as much as that in a month. Rare, but it happens. And so then that kind of, you either use that money to pay off bits and pieces, stockpile it to guard you against the months.
Yeah, I think we all freelancers get feast and famine. I think you can't say this much a month, because some months it's way more, some months it's less, depending on so many things.
I guess it comes down to what you price. That's where you are in terms of setting your prices, set your rates, depending on what can you survive on for the month if you did X number of days. And there are a lot of days that you're technically not earning because you're doing all the admin and all of the building and all of the generating, but because it's so refreshing, even when it's stressful, it doesn't feel stressful. It feels like, oh, I'm doing this to build something, and I'm doing this because then I'll reap the rewards later.
How important would you say social media has been? Because I didn't, when I first went freelance, I had no idea, first of all, that people use social media to market themselves for their business. And secondly, I had no idea how to go about doing that. I just thought, pretty pictures, blurb about what I did at the weekend and all that kind of literally social stuff. So it was a bit of a revelation to me that small businesses and freelancers and solopreneurs used their Facebook page or their Instagram or whatever to promote their business. So how pivotal has that been in your sort of development?
The Instagram and Facebook probably are just placeholders. I don't get very much business at all, really, from those. Those were all I had when I started, 20, started long ago. I can't even exactly remember the year, but when I had that brief sort of brain, I had Facebook and Instagram. I didn't really do them brilliantly, but I just put it out there and hoped for the best. But most of it was referrals, word of mouth, in where I was. When I went back to it this time round, Facebook and Instagram are placeholders that I use to create the content that I then either adapt, tweak, just repeat post on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn has been absolutely pivotal, crucial, because of the community and network that I've built up, and not just potential leads, potential clients, but of other copywriters, other content creators, readers like yourself, people in that creative space, because somebody might say, oh, I've got a project coming in, but I can't do it. Or a client of mine's looking for a specialist in X, Y, and Z, and you'll get to know people, and then you pass work back and forward. Even I had one other copywriter who was at capacity and just needed a few bits of research doing, etc., to take that half off her plate before she then could create. So essentially, we were working for the same client that I was working for her, for them. And all of that was done until January this year. Went full-time freelance in November 21. I'd been freelancing since January that year. Pandemic, everything was online. All my work was online. All my clients were Edinburgh, Glasgow, London, the South. Nobody, in fact, really in the area that I live in. No, it's only in the last few months this year that I started to make more of an effort to start doing in-person networking, and now I do get some business in-person stuff as well.
I was going to come on to ask you if you did any face-to-face networking, because I think I've seen some of your posts on LinkedIn about various networking things you've been to.
And that's been really, really good. I've really enjoyed that. In the pandemic, I wasn't in a place where I could have even thought about that, even when we were allowed to. It took a little while for me to get kind of comfortable with being around quite a lot of people. I'd isolated for 18 months. So to be around even a few people was scary. But now, January this year was one of my goals for this year, was to do much more in-person stuff. And I would say I do 2 or 3 events a month, maybe. And then I've just launched my own networking group as well. So that side of things has been really enjoyable, because you're seeing a lot of the same faces at various different events. You feel like you belong, you feel like you're part of something. It kind of recreates an in-person version of what I feel I get from LinkedIn.
Yeah. Just having a senior moment. I had a question.
In person, you were saying?
Yeah. Yes. So people might presume that because you spent your previous career standing in front of a room full of people performing, that going to in-person networking is a doddle. It's easy. It's just talking to people. How did you find it? Because I found it very difficult for a start, very intimidating, and I still have to sort of psych myself up to walking into a room full of people. So how are you with that?
I would say, I totally get that. I guess it's contextual. So when I first started this year, I had a second baby in November last year. It was end of October, beginning of November last year. And he was 3 months old in February. And I went to the first event with him in a pram. And I chose that event because it was the power of women. Power of women. And I thought, well, if they aren't happy with me turning up with a 3-month-old, then women,
not the network for
me. They were brilliant. They were so receptive, so supportive, everyone cooing, and I was like, great, you can have him, and I want to go and chat business. But then I also went to another one a few weeks after, called Assist Women, and I'd asked them in advance, is it okay if I bring him? And I said, if there's an issue, I'll figure it out. They again were great, and from both of those, I've met a few people that I then started to do some work with. So I chose them quite carefully based on thinking, I'm okay with that at this situation. And then as time has gone on, I've gone to different styles. So quite formal ones, quite informal ones, meeting up for coffees, and follow-up calls where I've met up for a coffee in person or virtually as well. But yeah, it is quite daunting still to some extent in some of them, because especially the further afield ones, like I'm in Darlington, and if I go to one maybe in Newcastle or somewhere else, I know I probably won't know that many people there. There might be 1 or 2 people, but I won't know that many. But it's also quite exciting, I think, kind of energy of like maybe if you were a kid and you had first night nerves for a show or something. That same kind of nervous energy of it'd be like, what if this happens? But then you think, well, sod it, you're just going to have a nice time and chat to a couple of people, and if you get a cup of tea, then great, you won't go cold. Fantastic.
And one thing that I found useful to when I was giving myself pep talks about this is, it's not like when you're at a party and you're like, what am I going to talk? I don't know these people. What do I talk about? You've got something to talk about because you've got your business to talk about, and you've got a whole list of questions that you can ask them to get them to talk about their business. So it's almost as though you've got an informal script to lean on when you go in, isn't there? So it's actually, if you sort of console yourself with that, I think that takes out a lot of the fear about what do I talk about.
I think it's good to have that definitely in your head, of those sort of not like a robotic response, but so it's an organic flow, but certainly to have those sort of prompts of thinking, well, I know I can talk about this going on at the moment. I can ask people about that. Nice. And I also think every single person has come here to have a nice conversation with somebody and make a genuine connection, and hopefully look to maybe work with people in the future. And even if they aren't meshing at this point in terms of needing stuff from each other, they might know someone who knows someone who needs it. And so it's not a futile conversation and for whatever confidence everybody exhibits, they may still also internally be feeling exactly the same. So I just remind myself of that too.
So let's talk about the actual copywriting for a bit. So obviously you're from an English teaching background, and so natural advantage with that. But have you felt the need, or have you done any kind of training into any sort of, because I know there are different kinds of copywriters. It's not just everybody writes everything. There are some who specialize in conversion emails, sales emails, cold pitch emails,
Mm.
product description, whatever. Have you niched, and have you needed any training to help you to improve that?
Yes and no. So when I started out, I was very much a generalist, and I had this idea because I saw so many people on LinkedIn specifically saying, you know, it's really important to find your niche so that you're a specialist in this, that, and the other, and then you can be the best person at what that person client is looking for. And I agree in a large number of sectors, it's really important to have a really full understanding of that sector. But I also see the value of not niching in terms of being able to take information and turn it so that anyone can understand it. And that's in the end what I decided to do. Initially, if I'm 100% honest, it was because I really needed work. So I wasn't about to start turning work away if it was from an area that I didn't 100% understand. And I figured if I don't understand it, and I know that I won't understand it once I've read it and then looked into it, then I'm not the right person for this job. If I don't understand it, but once I've researched it, I will, or enough certainly to sell what it is that they're asking to sell, then that is the right job for me, because I need to make sure that I can communicate it so that anyone can understand it, so that anyone that they want to buy their product will buy their product. So in the end, I actually niched that way in terms of the style of my copywriting and the service I offer, the way that I write, rather than a specific sector. And
Of
rather than a
course,
specific
having been a teacher,
medium.
sorry,
Yeah.
having been a teacher, obviously, you're very, very used to being able to explain things so that
Mm,
people understand.
yeah. I
Yeah.
suppose it comes from that, you know, when we were teaching and you would teach students to not worry about what kind of text comes up and not worry about what purpose of the text comes up, but to be able to use those skills to deconstruct the language and the sentence, and the style, the tone of voice, all of those things, whatever happens. And so it's, I suppose, turning that on its head, that it doesn't matter what the text they're asking you to write, whether it's a blog post, newsletter, whatever, you are using the skills, and then style and formatting come in second. I mean, you know the purpose, you know what it's got to do, but using the skills first and foremost.
Mm.
And in terms of courses, there are some courses I would like to do. I need to get some time to actually to dedicate properly to it. I've done a couple of short little ones that were from other copywriters,
Mm.
mainly to do with using LinkedIn, and do with some bits sort of things. But I haven't actually done any courses. And at one point, I had a bit of imposter syndrome on that, thinking, oh, well, am I a charlatan portraying myself as a copywriter when I haven't even done any courses, and I haven't studied this, and I haven't read that book. And then I started to think, but if you're doing what you're doing and you're earning what you're earning and you're getting the feedback that you're getting, then actually at this stage, does it matter that you haven't done those things? Because there's more than one way to see it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's fair enough. So have there been any big sort of learning points for you on this journey?
Definitely, in terms of the actual business administration side of things, definitely. At the beginning, I was charging way back when, way under what the competitive rate was. When I restarted this time round, I've looked into sort of the going rate. So at that point, was already starting at standoff. But I also was billing after projects at an hourly rate. And if a project then changed tack, if they needed more edits, if they had said that they wanted something and then it was put on hold, all of those things meant that I was freaking out, thinking I am not going to be able to pay the mortgage this month, not going to be able to do it. I fairly soon went into day rates, and I would say after about 6 months, I guess, I started billing upfront. Because at first I thought, oh, but that's really cheeky to ask money upfront. Then I thought, actually, when you go to any kind of shop, you're paying upfront. When you're going to any, when you're paying for a beauty treatment, you might pay straight after it, but you're paying on the day.
Yeah.
And you're paying to secure that person's time. You're paying to secure that person's definite availability and paying for the job. So I changed quite quickly to upfront payments with a 7-day payment term. And I guess that realization that I could be in charge, what I wanted to charge and when I wanted it, that was quite a big turning point. Because it meant things were much more secure. And it was almost like, I don't know if it's a female thing or not. It's maybe just a freelancer thing or a starting out thing. But it felt almost like, at the beginning, a little girl asking for permission to do things because we get told off. That's not how people do it in the real world. And then after a while, I was like, but you're living in this real world now and it's your business. So you can do it how you want to do it because it's your business. And if people don't like it, then either need to explain why it is or we don't work with it. There's enough work out there to be all right with that.
And have there been any major pitfalls or problems along the way that have maybe changed your trajectory or slowed you down a bit? Or
must have been last year, I think. Last year we had was in talks with another person who had got a collective, and she's absolutely fantastic, really, really lovely. And I've worked with her a lot since and would love to continue working with her on any other projects. She's fantastic. But she had a client that was taking forever to come back on a project that had this brilliant trajectory. It was looking like it would be at least sort of 3 months of work, really, really good work, at a really good rate. Agreeing my rate, and it would have been enough for sort of 3 months of covering everything for me just on that one project. And she had got a team together of other freelancers and proposal in, and the client was all really, really happy. And then they kept coming back and saying, oh, well, we're still discussing it with this, we're still doing that. And because of it not being anything to do with me other than saying, yes, I'll do it, just let me know. We'll map out these dates, we'll map out this time. And it kept getting pushed and pushed. So that kind of hanging on, wondering when you were going to start, first off, whether you'd still have availability, having to sort of be cautious with other work that was being asked of you. And in the end, they ghosted and completely ordered and it didn't happen. And so then she was obviously out of, she put all this time and energy into it. The other freelancers and I were then not getting anything for it. Neither was she. And it was just sad because we were all really geared up for it. We were all really excited. So that does happen occasionally. And that can be quite disappointing because you thought, if I get that in, then I don't have to worry for 3 months. I don't have to worry and I can hustle and I can put some money aside like a squirrel with nuts, you know, like I can have that for the future and it's great and I can pay this off, and you're on such a high, and it is quite sort of an anticlimactic thing. But I've got a lot better at coping with that and thinking, well, these things happen, and it just means off and start looking for other stuff and fingers in pies along the way. And it's not anyone's fault, it's just the way of the world.
Yeah, there are so many variables in the background that you just don't know about. You can't take it. It's never personal, is it?
No, and you just have to go with it. And it's definitely, this year has been hard in terms of juggling the workload because of having a very young baby and being freelance. Whereas last time when I had the baby, I was on mat leave, so I was already getting still a lower salary, but I was getting something.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to worry the same way. Whereas this way round, I've had all my postnatal recovery and the health side of that, the mental health side of that, energy side of that to contend with, whilst also needing to provide for 2 children now and keep everything afloat and still invest as much energy into done. So I've definitely had to, I've not been as strong as I normally am in terms of deadlines and productivity, and that things have not been up to my usual standard. And that's been because I pride myself on the standards. I'm now at a point where I'm almost back to normal and maybe months. So I've found ways to kind of push through that, but that has been quite a journey in terms of feeling that you're doing a good job and feeling that you're not letting people down, and that you're also justified in having that time with your baby and justified in taking rest periods to look after yourself. That's quite a hard balance.
I mean, I think we always thought that performance management in school was quite harsh and quite unfair a lot of the time, but actually we don't need a performance management system to make us accountable, do we? Because we do it to ourselves, and we are horrible bosses to ourselves and very demanding. So it's not an easy ride being your own boss.
No, it's not. I definitely would say that the stress of juggling and the stress of balancing and the stress of piecing together, jigsawing together projects to make sure you've got that salary is, as you said earlier about the other people, it's nothing like of workload from teaching. You're not singing to anyone else's hymn sheet. So even when it's stressful, you think, right, okay, well, I'll it's stressful, but I'll get to that today. But you're not going to get told off by anyone. You're going to get, an email from parents. You're not going to have to worry about whether the kids are going to misbehave later or this, that, and the other. You're not going to feel like you're going to get done for incompetency or anything like that, because you haven't got anyone checking up on you in the same way. You're only accountable to yourself and your clients. And as stressful as it is, it's still energizing stress all the time, because it still feels like you're accomplishing stuff and you're pushing through it for yourself, not anyone else.
Definitely. And since I'm a skinflint and I've only got free Zoom,
business, lean business runnings. Good.
So before Zoom kicks us off, I'm going to say thank you so much, Katharine. This has been really interesting. I think it's given us a really good insight into how to run a business, not just how to get to being in business, but how to run it as well. So thank you very, very much.
No, thank you for having me. Really a pleasure.